We're going live here. Hello. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can see me and hear me. We're back. Part 3 of the saga of generating Livewire components with Blueprint. Sorry for the delay. I was trying to wait. I got a heater vent that's like right here. And it probably creates a little whoo in the background. So apologies for that. I was trying to wait for the heat to turn off. It's a cool morning, but hopefully it'll turn off in a minute. So if you're getting a low drone in the background, I apologize. Anyway, I don't know where we left off on this stuff. This is getting a little unwieldy. So here's what I want to do. I want to run the test suite, see what's still broken, and kind of make a list of what I'm going to fix for this MVP. I am comfortable launching this without every nuance of, Livewire component statements available. I'm okay if it has a few bugs to launch because I think the use case of generating this is, I think the generation that it provides currently is already better than make Livewire. Or Livewire make or whatever, the commands that are available. So, anything that pops up, any bug that does get launched can be, pretty quickly fixed. Plus, there's a handful of issues that I want to fix, open issues that are out there on Blueprint anyway that I want to fix. So what I'd like to do is, the point is I'd like to determine how I can get this PR'd, go ahead and get it PR'd, merge it. That way next Wednesday, I can do a live stream on Blueprint open issues before I tag anything. Because again, just because it's out there and merged doesn't mean that it's, I have to tag it. I can put it on Dev Master. So yeah, I'm not sure what's left here. So I wanna kind of get a feel for what's left. So let's do that. Let's get organized is the point. If you do my Shifty Bits newsletter and stuff, I call this a punch out list. This comes, I first heard this when I used to work construction way back in high school. And a punch out list, in that regard was basically, when the job got close to being complete, there was this final list of here's all these things that we dinged up the bathroom wall, moving in the vanity. There's some popped nails on the deck, all these just little tiny stupid tasks, it just felt like tons of them. And you got this list and you were the punch out guy, that day or that week. You just did all that random crap, That's where I kind of first heard it. And so I've kept that in my projects towards the end, before launch or when I've kind of working on this sluggish feature and you've kind of got the bulk of it done, but there's that last 5% that just seems like you can never get it complete. I just like to make this punch out list. And when that punch out list is done, I'm done. If I miss something, whatever, we'll figure it out. But that gives me kind of a goal to punch out, whittle down, and kind of feel like I'm making progress instead of just right now where it just feels like, I don't know what's left to do here. It feels like so much. So anyway, we ran the tests. Let's use these tests to kind of determine the punch out list. So first of all, we have some failures here. Now I think this is a bit noisy for two reasons. One, we've got some dumps in the code, which obviously we need to remove. And then we have some additional things where, again, this is kind of beyond the scope of that initial PR, generates components with custom namespaces and respects special configuration. I don't know what configuration Livewire has right now, if any. I feel like these two tests could just be marked as incomplete. So let's do that right now. Again, we're just going to start punching away at this thing. See if we can knock it out, right? So let's start punching to the analogy. Let's get in here on Blueprint and let's open up this test first and just start, again, kind of making this less noisy. Let's get rid of these that we don't care about right now. We'll just mark them as incomplete. So once PHP Storm catches up, I saw Fideloper's tweet that he finally decommissioned his old iMac I'm actually on a similarly aged iMac. I think late 2019 iMac. And man, lately with the latest PHP Storm and stuff, I don't know why, but it is starting to show its slowness. Annoying. Anyway, let's get in here. Might be Santa Claus might need to bring me a new iMac. Whoops, not that. This. Here we go. All right, let's do this. Mark, if I could type, mark as incomplete. Mark incomplete. Sorry, not mark test incomplete. There it is. Mark as incomplete. Yeah, duh, not been implemented yet. Okay, cool. And then same thing down here, respects configuration. Do we even have configuration? I don't know. Let's run this again. We should just have this one failure, which I think is, this is a legit failure. So we're gonna fix this here in just a second. But first, to the point of the punch out list, let's kind of get this determined here, right? So let's go back to our code. Let me just open up for now just a README file. Or is there a scratch pad? Do they still have scratch pads in PHP Storm? I thought there was like a, yeah, here we go, scratches in consoles. Here we go. Yeah, there it is. All right. Oh, look at that. Look how, oh, this stayed in here. Oh, wow. Look how long ago I used this. This is when I was spotting the new on-demand digital. This was a stream from like 3 years ago. I guess it preserves the scratch pad just across projects. That's crazy. Okay. Anyway, that was a long ago thing. So this is our punch out list. So let's get test passing, and then this. So the actual error here is that everything else is fine. It just didn't generate the event for some reason. So we need to figure out why it didn't generate an event. I feel like the other tests do. Maybe something's mocked that shouldn't be. I don't know. We'll have to look at what other tests do. And then the other thing, and I think we talked about this last week, and here's kind of the never-ending part of this. Not never-ending, but here's kind of the part of this that feels kind of like a slog. Within the context of a Livewire component, some of the existing statements that you can use in a HTTP controller, they don't line up one-to-one in the context of a Livewire component. So we can see here, for example, the assumption here was that within an HTTP controller, there's no such thing as properties. Every action is self-contained, and therefore all variables are a local scope. And since they're a local scope, it just assumes here, again, that it's a local scope. But in the case of Livewire, that's different. You have properties that get declared in mount, and we finished that up last week. But now the problem is if you reference these particular properties inside of your methods that you're generating with Blueprint, that it doesn't know when this statement gets rendered that it should throw a this in front of it as a property. It also does that certain statements also don't just line up that well. And this is kind of a bad demo in fairness, but at the least this should probably say this arrow dashboard URL. Now, it's redirecting to a route, and we called this variable URL. I think that's a bad demo. We can adjust that. But I think at a minimum, instead of using a string here, this should probably know to use the dashboard URL within the context of Livewire. So the point is, we need to refine, we need to review the controller statements for Livewire. I'm going to call it context, right? So I think these are the two things, and this is kind of generic. Why are other classes not generated? Okay, I definitely want to fix this today. I'd like to look at one of these that is already broken, for example, just this one, to see kind of what that looks like on how we fix it. You know, is this some kind of trait? Do we just forcibly pass it in? Do we add some kind of flag that like Livewire context is true? I don't really know what we do for these statements. So I want a path forward here. I don't think all of these are going to be done, but I think if we can get a path forward here, then again, I'm in a place where I'm willing to open a PR for this and possibly go ahead and merge it. So let's get rocking here. Let's get cooking. Okay, why are the other classes not generated? Let's go find out. Where were we? Let's get on generator tests. Okay, outputs generates components with model using custom namespace. We mark that as skipped. Output generates components for tree. Okay, this is a data provider. It's got a bunch of different stuff here. So one of the things we're saying is that it should generate this profile updated event. Now, whoops, sorry. Is that actually an event or is it a job? We need to go look at let's go look at our YAML. So let's familiarize ourselves with our YAML. So we fire, yes, we fire an event. Okay, fine. Let's go look at our controller generator test. And I kind of want to do the same thing here. This has an output generates for tree. Here's all of our controllers. Okay, interesting. We don't, So we don't actually generate, this is just a bad test. We don't actually generate the other things at this point in time. This gets generated, these get generated by the statements later on. There's a statement generator is the point. So if we look at the statement generator test, my guess is, oh, this is the abstract one. They have individual statements. Yeah, there's individual statements. So I think if we look for the event generator, what we'll see, I would imagine in this test, I don't know why my shortcut keys are not working. There we go. Yeah. So what we see here is that if we pass this a YAML file, this is the thing that actually generates the class. So this is just a poorly constructed test, no big deal. Let's go back to our actual component generator test. And instead of this, we will drop that out because again, this particular generator, the Livewire component generator, is not responsible for actually making that class. So if we run this again, we should see, great. So we see that we're passing, but there are issues. I think the issues are the incomplete tests. That's fine. We know we're not done here though. This is actually still kind of broken. So let's make sure that this test fails for the right reasons. And again, try to go ahead and fix this. Let's just try to fix this statement and see what it looks like. And I think that's kind of good enough for today because it's going to give me some ideas. I don't want to review all the like 12 statements on a live stream. I don't think that's good content. Let's just review one of them and see, hack it kind of a way forward here. So let me go back to our actual generated code. Let's get an appropriate failing test. Because again, we pass for the simple example. I think if we can pass for the simple example and we can pass for using the existing statements, that's good enough for launch. I really feel that that's good enough for launch. So we don't generate that, we generate this. That's just the name of the file. This is what actually gets generated. So again, if we can have this be aware to do that within the context of a Livewire component generation, this doesn't affect the way it's generated on the event. The event's still generated the same way. It's only within the context of a Livewire component that the code needs to be generated differently. So we just need to kind of figure out how do we want to make that work, right? Do we extend it? Do we make like some kind of event Livewire generator, event Livewire statement? I don't know. I don't know what the answer there is. So that's the part I want to kind of hack on today. So we should get a failure now, or an exception, because it's mockery. And the issue is this user no longer lines up with what's generated, which is just user. So if we can make this work, then our test will pass again. So I'm going to get rid of these dumps now because they were just kind of in there to kind of supplement the crappiness of mockery output, which is yet another project that's been floating. I can't believe this for me. I used to be so good at like completing something all the way. Last 3 or 4 months has been rough. Anyway, where were we? We were on component generator. Let's get rid of our dumps. So see you later dump, and see you later dump. And we should get a cleaner, well, not a passing, but we should get cleaner dots on the output here. Cool, no more dumps. All right, good. Let's see if we can make this pass. So what happens here is that when we actually loop over the generation of the body, we build properties, we build methods. I think within build methods, we ultimately, here we go. We just have this huge kind of if statement, block that's just like, okay, if it's a send statement, then do this. If it's a validate statement, then do this. If it's dispatch. So here we go. Here's our fire statement, right? And we basically say is named event. Otherwise we add, if it's not a named event, then we add an import. Otherwise we just take the statement and we call output. So output says dispatch event. If it has data, then just output the data. Okay, if it's a named event, then it's that. Otherwise we're dispatching it, and we can put out the event as is. So template event. Oh, if it's a named event, we change the template. I see. Okay. If it's a named event, then we just call the event helper on a string. We don't dispatch. And then we sprintf that based on data and build parameters, and this just does an array map of the parameters passed in. If this data, build the parameters, otherwise it's empty. So build parameters just takes data, this data. So where's this data passed in? In the constructor. Okay, so sorry, let me explain what I'm thinking here. There's a couple different ways we can do this. We could, of course, pass in something else here that's like Livewire equals true. And if it's Livewire, then it knows to take the data and put a this in front of it. But that's actually not 100%. That's not 100% the way it's going to be. So we'd have to pass in like a Livewire context and then what the Livewire properties are. And then down here, when we build the parameters, we would have to say, oh, does the name of this match one of the, is it in the array of Livewire properties? Oh, yes, it is. Okay, then put, a this arrow in front of it. So we could do that. That is, the passing of a flag down into this is probably the simplest way to get this to work. But of course, simple's not always what we want to do as developers. So let me just think about an alternative avenue here. An alternative avenue is to keep this thing dumb. This fire statement is really just a printer. It's a formatter class. It's very dumb. It's really just an immutable object that has an output method, right? Now there's different ways you could design this. If you read all of like Fowler's stuff, you would take this mutable object and you would pass it to a legitimate, printer class or formatter class. And then that class could maybe be aware, oh, I'm in a Livewire context. Okay, I print myself a little bit differently. And you could do all sorts of abstraction and craziness, but it's very simple to keep it here. And the point I'm making is that this class, even if it could be broken out more, is pretty dumb. It only knows about things, that's been passed into it. So adding a bunch of logic to be now aware of the Livewire component, just, I don't know, that doesn't feel right to me. So part of me feels like this parameter, the data that gets passed in, should just automatically be prefixed. That's kind of what I think. It should just automatically know that, it's this arrow user. It's not just user. It's within the context of this arrow. So what that would mean is that, now unfortunately this statement's kind of already pre-built. So statements come out of this component methods. Where does this get added? So yeah, the problem is that this statement is already built up. And what I mean by that is the data is already set within this. That's kind of the part that makes it tough. That makes, again, the flag that goes in there easier. So I've done a lot of abstract talking. Let's demonstrate this with some code. The point here is that if I dump, let's just dump statement data, right? If I dump this, what we'll see here is user. And I don't need to run all the tests, but the point here is that we see statement user. Let's get it to where I'm just running this single test real fast. Where are we? Let's just copy it. Let's get back to our component generator test and this, and let's run this. So vendor bin PHP unit, that filter that, copy the actual test file, because there's dozens of things named that. Let's copy the test file is what we want. There we go. Okay, a little bit faster here on the failure. Okay, so again, we just get user here. Now it would be awesome to be able to change this data within the Livewire component generator. I think that's probably the best approach, but it is not at all the easiest approach because again, this thing is immutable. It's already been pre-built elsewhere by Blueprint and given to this class to just output itself. But again, we need to affect the output. So there's a couple things we can do. We could, of course, just rebuild another statement. We could just, say statement equals new fire statement and pass it, all the same stuff that was in the original statement, but with kind of like our own data. So data, and here we could, rebuild data based on, this prefix if matches mounted property, right? So we could do something like that. And this should work. I don't know where else statement is used downstream, so let's just kind of check this. Okay, yeah, so statements used elsewhere, that could affect things downstream, but for the purposes of outputting, we could do this. And we still keep the thing dumb. It's a little unfortunate we have to kind of new up a new fire statement within here. But again, it's not making the underlying code have to become aware of Livewire context. So again, I think this is actually easier than I thought. So instead of pushing properties and logic down into a very simple class, this is clearly pretty dense with if statements already. So I think I'm going to opt for this path. So again, sorry to take you on the mental journey there of why I'm choosing this, but I think, that's why you're here, right? That's what you came to hear about. That's the choice I'm making. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to rebuild data. We're going to rebuild data, and we need to prefix the data's name with this arrow. It's kind of silly that the $sign isn't injected there already. I see why it's not. It's parsed from, it's a parsed statement from the lexer. Sorry, I'm just thinking. In an ideal world, higher up in the lexer, you would already know that you were within the context of Livewire. And the lexer could theoretically inject this. It could. I think there's an opportunity to look at that elsewhere. Again, I think for today, let's just do this. So somewhere in here, we probably have the properties. Yeah, component properties. Okay. So let's just do kind of the same thing here. So if Whoops, scrolled way too far. So if we have component properties, then we want a rebuild statement, right? And what we want to do is we would want to say if any of the data name, if any of the current statement data, if we loop over this, and any of this, oh hey, look at this. Wow, if that hits it, that's gonna be funny. Does it like, is this listening to me? That's hilarious. Okay, let's just review the code that just got co-piloted. Okay, so array map function data use component. If data is in, then prefix it with this. We don't need the $sign, but that was pretty impressive. Hilarious. Okay, let's see if this works. Run the test. Okay, so there you go. So this can work. Again, as I've talked about, ad nauseum there for like 10 minutes, like, I don't know if this is the best solution, but it lowers the impact of the change, right? I'm not changing code in all the different statements. I'm just saying, hey, when I generate a fire, or when I output a fire statement in the context of component generation, so I'm in the component generator, and I have properties, I got to do something a little bit different here. Now this is a little hacky. I think this is a little hacky. It looks ugly to prefix it with this. But we'll kind of see how it feels as we do more and more of the controller statements, right? As we approach more and more controller statements, I think a pattern will emerge of what we're doing. And I think all of this will actually end up coming off a bit smoother, right? There won't be a need to do this everywhere, meaning I can either wrap it up in a trait, maybe the data that's passed in as properties gets a little bit denser instead of just being the name. Maybe it's like a name and context. There's a lot of opportunities there, right? I think there's a chance to say like add on this context or something, or maybe again, if I'm doing this everywhere, then maybe a statement has the ability to like be context aware or something, right? So like maybe there's some kind of like use with context, right? And this trait now allows me to maybe set some properties that should be like parent context, and I can do that after the fact, right? So let's just kind of see what it looks like for other statements. Where are we on time? We're about 30 minutes. I like to keep these about 30 minutes, but let's go out to blueprints. What's going on here? Give me Chrome. There we go. Come on, Chrome. So slow. Blueprint, laravel-shift.com. Let's look at controller statements. I just want to kind of briefly think about these. So delete's an eloquent statement. Blueprint will generate a model delete statement. Otherwise, a model destroy statement will be generated. Okay. For example, within a destroy controller action. Okay, I got you. So delete probably needs to be context aware. You could pass in a model to mount and then call delete on it. We saw with dispatching a job, same with dispatching event, probably needs to be context aware. Find probably does not. Fire, we've already made context aware. Flashing a message, yeah, I mean, probably context aware there as well. Blueprint will use the value as the session key and expands the references as the session, reference as the session value. Interesting. Probably needs to be context aware. Same with notify. Anything that basically has a with needs to be context aware. So, I mean, yeah, querying needs to be context aware. Yeah. Redirections, same thing. Rendering. We don't, I mean, Do you render a view inside of Livewire? I mean, you're probably not going to do that, but should it be context aware? Yeah, it probably should. Resource expands. Resource probably does not, I would think. I mean, I guess you could pass in a resource class. I wouldn't think resource would need to be, but maybe, you know, the hard truth is maybe all of them need to be context aware. Yeah. I think probably all of them are going to unfortunately have to be context aware. Yeah, I mean, and validate's the big one. And again, this is a prime example of something that can come after the fact. I think validate is really like its own PR, because validate is going to imply within the context of a Laravel or a Livewire component is that, you know, you probably want to use a form object. We're going to need to make rules and stuff elsewhere. You're not using, you know, form requests. You're using form objects in Livewire. So validate is actually just completely different. It's probably going to need its own Livewire validate class and form object generator, right? Right now there's probably a form request generator. Let's see. I'm just curious. Form request. Yeah, there's a form request generator. So there's probably going to need to be a form object generator that is a little more context aware. So, but the hard truth is I think all of these, maybe not delete, maybe not find, but I think all the rest within the context of Livewire need to be aware. So yeah. So looking at this one more time, knowing that all of them are going to need this, just trying to get some more ideas, and I'm gonna let them marinate in my brain for like a week, and we'll kind of see. When we you know, another opportunity is when we output, we could pass an array of context, right? We could output it. I keep calling it context. There's probably a better name there, but you know, what you're really saying with context is you're saying properties. And you're saying when you output this, here are the available properties. Merge that in with your data. And again, the statement we just made, this little one-liner that Copilot gave us, really ends up going, you know, down here when we build the parameters. You could do that. You know, then it's you know, minimal impact. It's just a property. The logic's here, and again, everything's, you know, you don't have to go rebuilding statements everywhere. Just the fact that all of those statements are probably going to need this. But again, I think there's probably an opportunity for some kind of trait, right? A shared properties trait. So it's like use, you know, shared properties, like, or, you know, it could even just have like a with properties. And there's just some simple methods on here. It potentially overrides build parameters, you know, and then you could set that after the fact. Now, I don't like that turns it into like, it's no longer kind of a value object. It's no longer kind of an immutable value object. You're actually now kind of mutating it on the fly with these properties. So I don't know if I like the trait as much as honestly just passing it in. It's like, hey output, be aware that these things are properties. And so as such, you know, you'll need to output them differently. So I think I'm leaning more towards this. I might see what this looks like. But yeah, I think passing output properties is probably the lowest impact balance of both worlds. So instead of basically doing this everywhere in the code, let's just see what it looks like real quick. And if it passes, finish up the stream there. So we'll pass in this, or what, sorry, it wasn't that. It wasn't this. It was component properties. Is this just an array of names, I think? I'm assuming that's just an array of names based on what we've already come across. So it can be empty. If this data, none of that matters anymore. Here, this data, and we would pass in properties. We get an array properties, and then we just kind of clean up this array map. So this array map just becomes a little denser, a little too dense to be honest. There's no new fire statement. Now we're basically saying, okay, parameter, this parameter. So yeah, it's kind of like if you're in array, if you're in the array of properties, okay, AirPods, what are you doing? If you're in the array of properties, then you would prefix this arrow. Otherwise, you would just go back to doing parameter. I think that's equivalent. So if you're in array, if parameter is in the array properties, then prefix it with a this, otherwise just a $sign. Let's see if this still passes. It does. Okay, I like that a lot better. I think let's stop here. I think we have a way forward for all of the other statements. If I have time, I'll do that off stream, and then because I think a part 4 starts getting again a bit dense. So going back to kind of our scratch pad, other classes, they're generated by other things. So checkbox there. And then we basically review the controller statements for Livewire context. What we found is that basically all of them need to be aware of the context, but we have a way in which we want to do that. We basically are just going to give output an optional parameters argument, so it knows to pair that with the current data to know how to properly output its parameters. I don't think that's terrible. I don't like that it's what I would call like a sparse parameter, meaning it's not used anywhere else in the code base. But I think that's lower effort. Again, that's minimal impact than basically going into every statement and making like a fire Livewire statement, right? And then that abstracts, the other one, and then it has an extra property of parameters, and that's too much. That would just bloat the code base significantly. So I think passing this in with a little bit of awareness at which it outputs, and it's changed by a set of properties, is pretty minimal. I mean, it's what, 2 lines of code changed here. We added an argument, we passed it along. Yeah, so we added an argument, and then we threw in a ternary, like not the end of the world. So I think that's pretty good. I think that's a win. Okay, we're back to passing. Technically speaking, the whole test suite passes now, but we still have some incorrect code. So this is not PR worthy, and as we saw, other statements are going to need to be aware of the properties on output as well. So I hopefully, given that we have a path forward now, I will hopefully work on that off stream, and next week we'll merge this PR and maybe tackle some issues on Blueprint so I can tag potentially a 3.0 of Blueprint, and yeah, so it'll be good to go with Livewire component generation. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining live. Appreciate the chat and sticking with me on my journey through how I want to build that. See you next week.